Hi, everyone.
Hello. Hi.
So on this panel, we'll talk a little bit about grassroots movements in general, pro-choice activism, since activism, as we define it, is also work. Even though most of us don't get paid for our activism, it's definitely as important, and at least, I mean, it is definitely as important to us and to the society, and hard and yeah, important. So we decided that we need a panel to talk about it, especially recently in Poland, where we're from. Abortion and topic in general, pro-choice movement has been a very important part of our everyday life. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll also talk a little bit about Catholic Church and its influence on this topic. So first of all, I'm Sara, and I'm here with Oliwia. We're both from Youth Together, and this panel is, of course, in English, as it's an international panel. Yeah, so first of all, Oliwia, we have a few topics to go through. First of all, what would you say were the most, focusing on Poland first, what was the structure of the movement in Poland? And what were the most, do you think it was more centralized or local? Do you think that, so we also was, we should talk a little bit about, was it supported by the parliament parties or not? So what do you think?
Well, from my experience and what I noticed, most of the protests were run by local organizations, grassroots organizations. One could notice protests in small villages or really big cities, and they were mostly run by small organizations. Yet still, one may think of a feminist pro-choice organization as a main one of Strajk Kobiet, meaning women's strike. Yet still, many people don't think of them as their main organization, yet still they are portrayed as one by the media.
Mm-hmm. You said about small organizations, and other than that, I also had experience with helping organize protests in small towns where there were no organizations and just women. They messaged us. They messaged our Facebook page, and they asked us if we can make an event like on Facebook for them, so they can easily communicate in there and inform people about the event. And there was sometimes hundreds of people in really small villages when there were no protests ever. It was, I remember seeing, there was this photographer in one small city in near the sea in Poland. And he went to one of the city and made this beautiful movie from one of the protests. It was a lot of, with a lot of music and really, really motivated and organized women, and not only women. It was really beautiful sight. I remember just literally crying watching that because I was so amazed with, people's power in general. Yeah. That I think that the local organization, the local people that organize and are motivated and encourage each other to speak up are the most powerful part of any movement. And even though sometimes we see in media those really well recognized people, like in Poland, for example, we have Marta Lempart. They're only a small tiny piece of it. They get the media attention, but there would be nothing without all the women and other people with uterus in all over Poland, who went out every day after we had this absurd ban on abortion in Poland. Yeah,
I think that it's amazing to see people, no matter where they're from, just fighting for their rights. especially after the tipping point in Poland, what do you think it was? I think that we all know what it was, but
Yeah. So, well, definitely, and so the abortion, the protest movements in Poland have existed for, well, really, really long time. We had Black Tuesdays with Black Fridays. They were all really huge, massive protests organized in Poland, and they were, they got media coverage all over the world, and they were, first of all, demanding legal abortion, which was not a thing in Poland. And the second of all, they were, of course, protesting the idea to ban abortion due to defects of the fetus. So when our technically like constitutional court, but in practice our government with the hands of constitutional court banned abortion almost completely, it was I think many of us, like, it was really hurtful because of so many years of going to the streets that felt kind of I mean, it was a feeling of waste, even though I know it wasn't, but it was kind of like this feeling that we fought for so long, and
yeah, like all of this was just reversed. And
yeah, but then after that day, like on that day actually, when the ban was like decided on, so many people went out, even in in COVID, when everyone was afraid for their lives, but they were still so angry and so motivated. It was beautiful. And like you may think that those like previous thing was like a waste, but because of that, people were already, there were so many organizations already like that existed in Poland and talked about those topics, and people had there were the structures that could have been like we used thanks to that. So yeah, I would definitely appreciate all those years of amazing activists promoting feminism and pro-choice in Poland. Yeah. So coming back to the ban and well, what we have currently in Poland right now, I think it's important to mention Catholic Church at this point, which had a great, huge influence on mindset of people in Poland, and on yeah, on why we ended up here, basically create like kind of running this propaganda of abortion being death and all of these horrible things, and people that decide on abortion being murderers. But I think other than Poland, I think it would be interesting to look at Argentina here, which is kind of like, first of all, it's the countries where the Pope's from right now. And it is still the country where abortion was just recently, well, not that recently, but recently kind of
in
legal.
January this year, actually.
Yeah. So do you have any like thoughts? How is it possible that even though you would think that both our countries are like Catholic Church is pretty important, here in Poland, Catholic Church was managed to kind of well, not only the Catholic Church, but was the factor of taking our rights from us?
Well, yeah, I think that one really can't separate Catholic Church from a government as state in Poland. There are many organizations such as Ordo Iuris that don't even hide with taking the religious propaganda from the government. And yeah, I think that it is really, I would say, a smart move of those politicians, as the religiousness in our country is also really tied to tradition, and many people. I know that one of my acquaintance said that in Poland, people belong without believing. They really identified with the Catholic Church, not even thinking about the values that the Catholic Church brings and what they actually say. So making the Catholicism their identity kind of helps them to manipulate those people. I think that in Argentina, the feminist movement was way bigger and way stronger, but it's also because there were many way worse attacks on women there. There were, I think that there's still one woman killed in Argentina every 30 minutes. Yeah. Or yeah, I think that. So, and also there were many really horrible rapes and rape attempts in Argentina that wouldn't really happen here in Poland. And still, it's really important to mention that now the Argentinian government is, I think, the most feminist one in the Argentinian's history. There's this president who's called Alberto Fernandez, and he established a new ministry, and it's a Ministry of Women, Gender, and Diversity. And it is run by Elizabeth Gomez Alcotra, and she's a feminist lawyer. She also was a professional footballer. So yeah, I think that the change in Argentina is a great thing, and it should give us hope that one day in Poland we will achieve the same thing.
Yeah, I think that in Argentina, it's really important to also mention how this was not only like through protests and through, magically appearing government that was feminist, but also a lot of like social changes, because thanks to like mainstream media and entertainment, that was just definitely like just people noticing that women actually and like want to watch feminist content, and being more and more popular. And yeah, just this societal change that was really huge part of this. Yeah. So okay, so let's.
Yeah, we tend to forget that the media and what we watch really influences what we think and how we perceive the world. So I think that raising awareness about feminism in Poland is really important, maybe even more important than we think. So I really strongly encourage everyone from Poland listening to talk about this and to not be ashamed about talking so much about it.
Yeah, second that. Okay, so another thing that is really an interesting topic in the talking about abortion is the different arguments and narratives. So we all know that there's plenty of arguments why legal abortion is necessary and should be accessible to everyone who needs it. But there's a lot of different arguments that can be used in different situations and in different contexts. And there's, and I think we could try to analyze those different arguments, how they are like, how we can use them in our, for example, in Poland. So, at the beginning, right before abortion was banned in Poland, like not all abortion, but almost all abortion was banned in Poland because of the due to the defects of the fetus. The most like important for me, I think, and effective and logical argument was talking about families, because all of those cases that were targeted by that ban specifically were families who wanted children, most of them, families who wanted children, families who were like, they ended up being like exposed to right now to a lot of pain and tragedies, So that at that time, I remember a lot of people, and instead of focusing that much on, the fact too that we all we deserve the right to have access to abortion, it was also focused on family and the pain and the struggle. So what do you think about it? Do you think that is is it okay to kind of change their narrative sometimes, or do you think it's more kind of we should always stick to some kind of ideal narrative, which is of course for us probably legal abortion, always, without any for everyone.
Yeah, going around the topic, going around the bush. Well, I think that sometimes talking about quite different things, like really small differences in the discourse, is pretty important. Yet still, I think that focusing on the families is a completely different thing, because we all deserve bodily autonomy, and it still doesn't matter that someone can't have a kid or doesn't feel like raising a kid. So yes, many people still do want to raise kids with certain issues, yet still not everyone can do that. We are all different, and we all have our needs, and we are all in different circumstances in our life. So I think that, yes, talking about helping those families that can't have a kid or that raise the kids with the difficulties, yeah, it is important to help them. Yet still, no matter what, we all deserve to have the right to decide about our body, no matter what. And yeah, because we talk so much about this, I think that it's pretty important also to mention that it is not easy to raise a kid with special needs. It may be portrayed as something beautiful, and it in many cases is, yet still it can be really, really, really hard, even considering that the families that raise those kind of kids don't really get any support from the state, from the government. So they don't have money. It's sometimes really hard to, I don't know, feel love from their kid or communicate with them, which can cause many frustrations and overall a really, really bad mood, which can lead to many other different problems. So I think that it is such a complex problem. It shouldn't be used as just an argument about others' bodily autonomy.
Yeah. Coming back a little bit to the protests and in general, street activism in this context. Of course, many of us spent hours, or, well, definitely more than hours, on helping organize protests or in any kind of way supporting people that were on the streets if we were at home because of COVID, for example. So my question is kind of about how it was and how it is. As you probably remember, at the beginning, right after the abortion was banned in October.
I think it was.
Yeah, it was at the end of October. I think 22nd, I believe. So right after that, we had almost every day of protests in most cities, like the bigger ones. It was huge, and people were really, really mad. And then, of course, as every movement, it kind of slowed down. And of course, that made us kind of definitely a lot of people started, getting tired and it's it's impossible to go out every single night to the streets, especially when it's cold and the winter started. But do you think there were any specific things that kind of made it worse other than just cold, but like any political reasons or any like problems with organizing, or do you see any like specific reasons why the protests kind of like, you know, calmed down, they disappeared, and we haven't seen them recently at all?
Yeah. Well, the first thing that comes into my mind is police brutality, because many people, myself included, are really afraid to go out in the streets and use their constitutional right to protest because of the police brutality that happens all around our country. I have friends that were beaten up. I know that some people had their limbs broken. It is definitely really scary to go out and not know if you end up in an arrest or just your home. And also, I think that there is a big amount of people that lean on the orthodox right or alt-right side of the political spectrum. And I know people that were just scared because they heard that some people planned to beat up those kind of people that wanted to protest for our rights. I also was like shouted at by those kind of people. And I also was, I think it's called written up in English by policemen. I think about 2 times, and it also wasn't a nice experience. So it's not only like the lack of motivation, but pure fear that can be noticeable, can be noticed in the protesters. And what do you think?
I have like you said about the police brutality. I also have something different connected to police to kind of share about, and because I thought about it. So in Szczecin, where I'm from, I few times, well, during the last year, like you know, I was in kind of legally in charge, like, and I was taking care of and like registering many protests with police and contacting them and talking to them. And you know, we in our city, we have this really kind of weird relationship with the police that they kind of, we have very, it's like they allow us to like kind of have protests, but they're really they really like keep us like it's hard to like, they keep us close. I don't know, they try to like control us as much as they can, but also being friends, you know, like keep your friends close and then closer. That's kind of what police does to us. It's really weird relationship with like police, not kind of being nice, but also really, really controlling. So we don't get on that level of like brutality on the streets and like this kind of, you know, confrontation, but there's also we feel really, really controlled and really, really like you know, affected by the police. And for example, I had those situations when I, for example, registered a protest, and then I talked to a police officer and he told me that, well, you know, you shouldn't register protests on Sundays because we have different things to do. And he was literally like telling me off how like I shouldn't do that. That's so rude of me. Like he has other stuff. Like this is literally his duty to be there and like protect us. And there was a lot of weird stuff that we heard. And this is kind of like a natural thing that police officers kind of allow themselves to do, is use really weird language that I will not bring up right now, to kind of make us feel small and discourage us to do that. It's not always violence. It's just showing you that they're the ones in charge and they're the ones that like, you know, just the language and the emotions and using their position in different ways. That is definitely discouraging. I mean, not for me. I'm always kind of laughing at that. But I know that not always. I learned to laugh at that, but it's stressful for many people, and I can see why a lot of people that tried, like the organized protests don't want to do it anymore after they're, for example, they're in different ways just police abuses their power to threaten them in some way or just make them feel insecure and uncomfortable in general.
Yeah, from what I remember, I think that like 2 years ago or a year ago, the police in Krakow also behaved in that way. But because of the development of the brutality all around the country, I think, I know that it has become way, way worse, and that people were beaten up in our city, and it happened really quickly. No one really knew what was happening. So yeah, sometimes police can be actually, I don't know, they can seem nice, but still the fear that something can happen because it happened once or twice. I think it happened way more times in Krakow, but I think you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, and so what do you think it's next? Do we, because the women's strikes are kind of slowed down. What do you think will happen next? Do you think that there will be a huge comeback of feminist pro-choice protests on the streets, or will we think of and fight for something else?
Well, actually, I do believe that there will be a very, I'm not sure how big, but definitely will come back. Will get like the protests will come back eventually. The pro-choice specifically protests, because it's what called like it's getting better and better if it comes to weather. It's getting warmer every week. So well, sometimes it doesn't, but definitely generally, it's getting warmer, and people are more and more like encouraged and want to go out to the streets. And as you probably experience, and many people experience in Poland, in summer, summer is the most busy like period of time for protests in Poland. I remember last year we right after I joined Youth Together, literally the first 3 weeks we had protests every single week.
Yeah, I also remember that in Krakow.
It was so intense. So generally, and COVID was.
Yeah, those are transparent from like half a year. So, and most of them are from the summer season. So yeah, I really do understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that we'll definitely see a comeback of pro-choice protests. I'm really interested in the like narrative that we'll have. I'm interested in what organizations and movement are going to kind of be a part of and work together, because as we like the feminist also like the left-wing like organizations right now are kind of in different weird relationship recently, as you probably know. So generally, I'm curious to see how it will look like, but in general, I'm sure that they will come back eventually. So that's first. I want to say something else here. What's next? Yeah, I think that other than that, there will be plenty of different things that we'll protest about. So definitely what I'm most like scared about is that we will just, just go into this routine of just doing protests and not really, I'm not saying that it's bad. I mean, protests are really important, like to our society in general, to allow people to express themselves, to talk about important issues. But we often get this reactionary, like we act like we only act against something that our government does, instead of like actually have our own narrative and kind of bringing our own topics. So this is what I'm always afraid of, like especially last year during summer, where our government did something homophobic. We were out on the streets talking about this. Then our government did something, I don't know, sexist. We were out and talking about it. Then we talked about, there was this whole thing that there was this big right-wing narrative in really racist stuff said. So we were against that, and there was a lot of this happening. And I really lack kind of this our own narrative of us going to the streets and protesting for something and not against something. And that is definitely something I don't see that often, and I don't think that's only like in Poland. I think that it's generally natural for us to be more like, you know, angry and need to express our emotions when there's something negative. So that is something that is also always like makes me feel like, no, nah, that's gonna be sad. We'll just go out and be angry. But then again, it's really important to be able to express this. So
yeah, I really get what you're saying. I also noticed that thanks to the women's protests, the strikes, the feminist strikes that were taking place in the country, there was also people kind of opened up to the discourse about transgender people because of because many people just wanted to say people with the uterus instead of just women. And I think that it has become a way more talked about and way less taboo of a topic in the feminist movement. So I also think that now we are thinking more intersectionally. We're thinking, we're trying to be inclusive to also LGBT people. So I think that thanks to the strikes, we also started talking about some problems that weren't talked about or were taboos. Also, I noticed a big wave of feminists that started talking about women of lower class that can't really afford a medical treatment from LuxMed that's priced 69 zlotys. And I think that it is also very important to talk about those in need, those that can't really afford to pay for abortion or any other treatment.
Yeah, the protests have definitely like in general movement take educational role. And what I also thought about is that in general, because of those protests, so many more people went from supporting the so-called abortion compromise, so like kind of supporting the abortion but not really, to actually learning more about it and like realizing that we need legal abortion right now. That learning about how many people are hurt because of the law in our country, and in general, like the amount of, I think, I don't remember the data, but there was like a huge race in like huge like way bigger number of people, that percentage that started supporting and agreeing with the legalizing abortion completely. Yeah, and before you asked you asked the question, what's next? And yeah, definitely I'm thinking about like the next months and the next like year, but also about like this kind of like reality in which we have legal abortion. Like for example, we have Argentina, or for example Ireland, where those are also Catholic countries. They're also conservative, like kind of pretty conservative countries, but yeah, they achieved that goal. And I'm thinking what's next, you know, for them, but also for us if we manage to get there. Yeah, do you think that, well, that there will be definitely many feminist things to work out still in society, but in terms of abortion itself, other than just legalizing it, do you think there are others like things to like?
Yeah, I know. Like, there's not only the problems with just the law, with the bills that we want to be passed, but also the societal norms that have been kind of established. So I think that it's really important to also talk about abortion and destigmatize it and normalize having more than one abortion, or having an abortion in a so I think that it is also important to educate others about abortion, so it will not only be passed by the government but also won't be looked down upon from just the people, just the society.
Yeah. What I'm thinking as well about it, what I'm thinking about as well is our healthcare system in general, because, like, of course, abortion, healthcare concern thing, healthcare, yeah, right. And definitely, if we need to improve gigantically, extremely improve our healthcare system. And if we need it to be more efficient if we actually want to save lives of people with uterus and people that can get pregnant. And even if we legalize abortion, it just needs to be accessible, and needs to be like actually accessible to people no matter where they live, if it's, you know, small towns or if they're poor or whatever. So that's definitely something that we will definitely, like, we'll surely need to work on. I think that it's possible to, that this one about like healthcare is definitely something we can work, not only in the context of abortion. So in general, we need to definitely improve that in our country. But many countries, like, it's so crazy that like healthcare is not considered in many countries, kind of considered luxury, you know, just being able to afford like healthcare, not only in general, because, you know, for example, in our country, we do have national, you know, like we have the right to healthcare, but it's kind of sometimes like, you know, 5 years, just wait 5 years for an appointment. And yeah, that is definitely not okay. And yeah,
and also even if we can have meetings with the doctors for free, we still do have to pay for the medication. That is in most cases really expensive. And I think that for me it is absurd that some people can't afford the medication that they need in order to be alive or just be healthy or be able to just live their life. So yeah, I think that it is also really important to concentrate on the healthcare in those feminist or just other movements.
Yeah. Okay, so general, coming back to kind of a little bit at the end, because we're gonna end in 5 minutes around. Also coming back to the concept of just activism and work. There's a lot of people that can get pregnant that started becoming activists and sacrificing kind of their lives and some parts of their lives to the movement. And I'm, of course, with every like wave of protests and every, you know, a big like, for example, a wave of protest last winter and autumn, there was more and more people like this. And I just want to just kind of quickly talk about and just appreciate the amount of people that decide to kind of work for free, mostly if they don't have like Patronite or something, for free, to improving our society and just changing lives for better. And I think it's definitely work that is often forgotten, you know, it's not meant, like, it's not considered work, even though I think that we definitely should do it, because, like, in, you know, in capitalism, we define work as just like making money, and instead of this really hard tasks that people do, organizing protests, fighting for people's rights, and it's a beautiful work.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think that what they're doing. And by saying they, I mean Aborcyjny Dream Team, or Ciocia Czesia, or Ciocia Benia, I think, that's from Berlin.
Yeah,
And
something like that.
many others. They're doing an amazing job, and they're helping many people with uteruses to just live their life to the fullest, and kind of keep their bodily autonomy. So yeah, big hugs and kisses and everything to you guys, because
Yeah.
we're really grateful for you.
Yeah, okay. I'm thinking also about different feminist goals that that are also going with kind of abortion like rights. Not only there's definitely still a lot of weird stereotypes that are connected to abortion. For example, that women do abortion are considered like easy, or there's a lot of slut shaming in that context. There's just a lot of different like very toxic stereotypes in society that you also mentioned. So I just wanted to find out, as additionally, that that's definitely something that we also need to societally care about, like work on, but also in terms of education with children, and and it's really funny because when we talk about education, children, and stuff like abortion and different other like left-wing feminist like things like values, there's a lot of people that get really angry, thinking that we want to like brainwash their children into being gay or whatever. But yeah, I think that those the young like education from being like from smallest person possible, like of course logically, it's really important in general.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to look like, I don't know, just talking about abortion to a 4-year-old. It can be telling them that they don't have to be, I don't know, hugged if they don't want to, that they can actually do with their body what they want to, and they can decide what they want to do with even their hairstyles. I think that it is important to keep in mind that those leftists don't really want to talk about aborting fetuses in kindergartens. And it is really important to teach kids about bodily autonomy, about equal rights, because just because every decent human being should know about it.
Okay, so at the end, maybe I'm thinking, do you have any like specific memory from in general pro-choice protests that you kind of have in mind, or do you like really positively remember? If you don't remember right now, I can go first.
You can go first. I also have one.
Okay, so I remember like my first black. I don't remember if it was like Black Tuesday or Black Friday, but like the first Black protest that I was on, it was like I skipped classes and I went with my like 1 year older friend to it, and it was like, I think it was the big like first like really big protest that I was on. I really didn't have that much like knowledge about it. I just really knew, I just had like this because in my like people that I was surrounded with and my family, was pretty obvious that that was the right thing to do, like go to that protest because abortion is something that we need, and I didn't have that much knowledge about it. I just went to it and I just really listened to really beautiful speeches of really powerful people it was just really inspiring. And the stories that I heard, and some, that was really a lot of that information was really new to me. And that is still why I really like appreciate the factor of education on protests, because I know some people just like, sometimes just go there, like they don't really think that much of it. and they end up learning and getting really inspired. So that is the cute memory that I have of my first protest.
Yeah, I also remember going, I think I was in like 6th grade, going with my mom and my aunt, dressed all in black, having black umbrellas, and skipping fast forwards to this and last year. I remember being in this like huge crowd of just protesting people, and I have really big social anxiety. But then I didn't really seem to notice that, because like we were all just one fighting for our rights, and we all just smiled even though we were really angry, because we felt just safe in this environment. So yeah, I remember coming back from the protests feeling just really, really empowered and fueled with this hope of better future.
Yeah, I think that with this positive, of those positive memories, we're gonna end now. I'm just gonna add that there are two more international, like English spoken panels. We mentioned before the topic of transgender people, and we also have a panel about that at 11 p.m. There is a panel about trans people and workplaces and their rights and their situation in England and in Germany and in Poland. So I would encourage you to attend that. And also it's, I believe, 5:50 p.m. We 5:30 p.m. we have a panel about in general workers' rights and trade unions. So with Norway and with Germany. So if you have some time, we encourage you to come. And of course, we invite you to all the other panels that are on this beautiful, amazing stream. We wish you the best Workers' Day. And yeah, have a good evening. Have a good day.
Have a great day.